Hello guys, let's talk about the following situation. So we have on our org, for example, CPQ, and CPQ have the following rules from the box. It's the product rules and pricing rules. So we could fire them when we sit on the edit line page, when we are using calculator, or in general we're just trying to save the code. We could, see results of work of these two rules, and we could see if there are any kind of items that need to be improved on our quote. But what if you got the requirements that you need to fire, some rules which are configured with a similar manner but at other different custom points? So how it's possible to organize it here? So one of the possible options is what you could do is you could create a rule object and you could create a condition object. So it might work in similar manner how basic objects for the CPQ package are actually organized. So for example, for the pricing rules or product rules. So it's when you have your parent object. On the parent object, you're specifying something like the following. So you're specifying what kind of, rule name you have, is it active or not, what is the object is related to, and context for that specific item. So our context is actually that specific triggering point when we need to invoke that specific rule, or you could call it as a tag. Like for example, when that specific condition or that specific rule needs to be executed, if in the logic we have the following tag or the following triggering point. So then for that specific item we have an error type. It might be alert or it might be validation, and then we could have here an error type. So all these kind of items will help us finally to simulate exactly the same behavior that we have with the product rules and price rules in the CPQ package. So next, our idea will be in the following. So if we already prepared the following object with, a related condition object, so we could configure our rule. So let's imagine that, here is our custom rule, right? It's a custom object. We specified all what is required on the parent object. Then we created custom rule condition where we specified that we would like to take a look for the specific quote line which is related to that quote, and we are looking for the field called product code, and we would like to check that operator here, sorry, value in the field product code is actually not equal to health check. And in that case, because it's related to CPQ code, we would like to fire that specific validation which we have on the parent rule, right? That health rule number one is fired. So how it actually could be organized on the, let's say, UI as one of the options. So one of the option is we could actually on the quote level put here additional custom button. So that custom button might be related to the screen flow. So that screen flow will actually take a look if that feature is actually enabled or not. So it might be, like in your custom metadata feature framework. And if it's actually enabled, then what it might do, it might invoke Apex logic, right? And that Apex logic will do the following. It will grab conditions based on the scope. So if your scope that you provided, right, is equal to the specific tag that we mentioned, right, then what it will do, it will try to construct SoQL queries in order to grab related parent object, child object, right, and then it will try to map it into the result based on the conditions that were set on the top level. Like for example, should it be all, or should it be, like something more like a formula, which will try to build all this kind of stuff, and then it will help you to actually get your final result, return it back to your screen, and then, you will be able to show it on the code level what kind of, for example, alerts or validations you got from that specific engine. So how it might look like, if, for example, here we have the following screen flow. So in the screen flow, we are invoking our Apex section. So into the Apex section, everything what we need to pass is just a scope of our variable or the name of our custom triggering point, and we need to pass here the ID of the record. So in our case, ID of the quote. So once it will be done, we will have our validation, and our validation will work based on our checks, right? If we have in the response validation messages or alert messages, or you could do it, like in the specific sequence that you want. Or if there are nothing, like this, then we could allow our customer to go into any other, related stage. So once that specific logic was organized, and like when that button will be placed on the screen, so then when you will add it into the page layout of your Lightning record page, when you will click on it, what will actually happen? It will try to execute related logic from our rule, and it will try if our object is, like passing this condition. So in that case, for my quote, like related items, I don't have, like item which is let's say passing that validation. So that's why that validation is actually fired for me. That, for example, for this health rule, number one is actually fired. And here you could see that, like it works. If there will be, like additional items related to alert, so in that case, we could even, have here two sections if you would like to display them, or we could have, like separate pop-ups for different items. So here at this moment, how it works. And I think that the most interesting part, how to organize all this kind of stuff, it might be, like Apex logic. So how to organize, like in a proper manner, all these conditions check. Because, for example, if you have very complex conditions, sometimes it might take some time for us to get the results. And this, like calculation, if it will be very complex, then, like when the user will click on that button, there will be just empty pop-up, right? It will work for some period, and only after that it will give you some results. So in that case, the main idea or good practices will be in the following. So first of all, you could implement initial screen, right? And your initial screen could show something like, like, for example, performing calculation or whatever. So once it's done, right, you could show the actual results. Plus, when you applying your logic, which will on the Apex level do all required calculation, right? Make sure that it's optimized. So that means that like, you're not doing not required SQL queries, that your calculation, like are very good, that the complexity of your code is, like normal. So you don't want to have, like very big number of nested conditions, like for example E4, and in a4 you have another 4. So it will be too much, right? And in that case, that logic will work, let's say, hardly, right? And it will take some good amount of time for that logic to be calculated. But what is the tool that you could potentially use if you want? So here you could use ChatGPT, and ChatGPT could actually help you to build the structure of your specific class, how you could organize it. And once you will organize it accordingly to the structure, so you will be able to see that it's, like will give you results with, like normal speed. And in that case, you will be able to do whatever is required for your logic. So in that kind of manner, business will still be able to use, like something which they already know how to use, like a product rules or pricing rules, and they will be able to configure how they want, like they will be able to apply it for different, like custom triggering points. But from the developer team side, right, what is required is to actually define these triggering points. Like for example, this part that we applied here, right, is related to quote. But if you would like to apply it for any kind of other object, like for example to the order, or for example to the invoice or wherever, right? So you might apply it via the similar structure, or if you have your, let's say, custom components, you could merge these components with a specific tag or with a specific custom point of execution, and then just invoke general framework, right? So idea will be the same, but instead of, for example, maybe flow, which we'll call Apex logic, you will have some, for example, another Apex class which will invoke this service class, and that service class will return you back, like results of the criteria check. So in that case, you will get, let's say, behavior which is similar to what is, like currently exist in the CPQ package, but with the possibility to extend it and use it in other use cases as well with other triggering points.